Rain poured like silver threads over the city streets that night, drumming against the windows of Harper's Diner, where a young black waitress named Maya Thompson wiped the counter for the fifth time that hour. Her apron was damp, her curls frizzed from the steam, and yet her eyes were sharp, alert, and tired in that way only people who had seen too much could be. At the far booth sat a man she'd never seen before, tall, refined, with that kind of calm money that didn't need to shout. His coat was worth more than her month's rent. His wristwatch glinted when he lifted his coffee. He was Alexander Voss, the reclusive tech billionaire everyone in the news had been speculating about for weeks. Some said he'd gone underground after exposing corruption in his own boardroom. Others said he was paranoid, that he traveled with bodyguards fluent in 5 languages. But when Maya brought his check, she froze. The guards outside, 2 men in black suits, stood beside a sleek black Mercedes. And then she heard them speaking softly in German. Not English, not business talk, but something darker, something that made her blood run cold. She only caught fragments. Es muss heute Nacht enden. It must end tonight, her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. She glanced at Alexander, smiling politely, as he rose to leave. "Sir," she whispered, barely breathing, "please don't get in that car." The billionaire turned, confused. "Excuse me." She looked at him, truly looked. "I think they're not your guards." And for the first time, the world's richest man felt fear. The morning had started like any other for Maya Thompson, except that nothing about her life ever felt ordinary anymore. The sun barely peeked through the smog-tinted window of her tiny apartment above the laundromat. Her alarm buzzed at 5:45 a.m., slicing through the hum of the dryers downstairs. She groaned, reaching out to silence it, her fingers brushing the framed photo beside her bed, her mother's smile frozen in better days. Maya sat up, rubbing her eyes. Her back ached from a double shift she'd pulled the night before at Harper's Diner, the old chrome and neon joint that had somehow survived gentrification and 3 rent hikes. She glanced at the envelope on her dresser, the hospital bill she hadn't opened yet. She didn't need to. She already knew what it said. As she tied her apron later that evening, she whispered to herself, "One more day, Maya. Just one more day." The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The night was quiet, too quiet. The rain had started again, steady and cold, painting the city in rippling reflections. Through the big front window, she could see puddles dancing under passing headlights. Inside, the jukebox hummed a low tune from another era. A trucker sat hunched over his plate of meatloaf at the counter. A young couple in the corner argued in whispers over a phone screen. And then there was the man in the far booth, alone, composed, a presence that didn't belong here. He looked important. Maybe it was the way he wore his overcoat, tailored, expensive, but not flashy. Or the subtle confidence in how he held his coffee cup, like every motion had meaning. He wasn't scrolling on a phone or glancing at a clock. He just sat there, watching the rain like it held secrets only he could read. Maya noticed him the way people notice a misplaced diamond, quietly, with curiosity and caution. She had seen plenty of tired travelers, business types, and lonely souls pass through Harper's, but this man was different. When she approached with the coffee pot, he looked up, and his eyes startled her. Gray, piercing, and full of thought. "Refill?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. He gave a small nod. "Please." As she poured, she smiled faintly. "Rough night." He chuckled softly, a sound like the beginning of a confession. "You could say that." His voice carried a calm authority, low, deliberate. But there was weariness, too, a kind that came not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. "You from around here?" she asked. He paused, almost considering how much truth to reveal. "Passing through," he finally said. Then he extended his hand. "Alexander." She blinked, taken off guard by his formality. "Maya." "Nice to meet you, Maya." "Likewise," she said with a grin. "You've got the look of a man who's been walking in circles all day." He smiled, the kind that felt genuine rare. "You could say that, too." "Let me guess," she teased. "Business trip gone wrong? Or running from a board meeting?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Something like that." He sipped his coffee and gazed out the window again. "You have a peaceful place here," he murmured. "Feels old-fashioned. Safe." "Safe," she echoed with a small laugh. "That's a new one. Most people just say outdated." That earned a real laugh from him, rich, quiet, human. For a fleeting moment, the billionaire and the waitress existed in the same world, bound by nothing but rain and conversation. But then the peace broke. Headlights flared through the fog outside. A black Mercedes-Benz pulled up to the curb, its engine too quiet, its windows too dark. Two men in tailored suits stepped out, umbrellas snapping open in perfect unison. They didn't look like ordinary drivers or bodyguards. Their movements were too precise, too military. Maya's instincts stirred immediately. Years of dealing with rough customers, late-night drunks, and strangers with stories had sharpened her sense for danger. And something about these men screamed trouble. "Your ride?" she asked, nodding toward the window as she set his bill on the table. Alexander's gaze flickered to the car. "Yes," he said simply, reaching for his coat. But Maya noticed the hesitation, the faint crease between his brows, the way his eyes darted to the window twice before standing up. He didn't look entirely sure. She wiped her hands on her apron and followed him to the counter. "You sure those are your guys?" she asked lightly, trying not to sound paranoid. He gave a half smile. "I have people who handle security." She said, unconvinced. "They look like they handle a lot more than that." Outside, the two men were speaking softly beneath their umbrellas. Their faces stayed shadowed, but their mouths moved quickly, rhythmically, a language she couldn't quite hear through the glass. Until the wind shifted. The diner's door wasn't fully closed, and a sharp gust carried in the sound of their words. Not English, not even Spanish, but a language she hadn't heard since college. German. Her heart skipped. She turned her head slightly, listening closer. The taller one spoke first, his tone clipped and professional. "When in das Auto steigt, ist es vorbei." Her stomach dropped. "Once he gets in the car, it's over." She blinked hard, unsure if she'd heard right. But the second man replied, "Hutnak muss es gestehen." It must happen tonight. Her pulse quickened. The coffee pot nearly slipped from her hand. Alexander was sliding on his gloves, reaching for the door. "Thank you for the coffee, Maya," he said kindly. She looked at him, really looked, and all her instincts screamed at once. "Sir," she whispered, voice trembling, "please don't go outside." He froze, surprised. "Excuse me." Her throat felt tight, her words shaky but urgent. "Those men, they're speaking German. I understood what they said. I think," she swallowed hard, "I think they're not your guards." For a moment, silence filled the diner, heavy and electric. The rain outside slowed to a whisper. And the billionaire, who'd faced boardroom wars and global scandals, suddenly looked afraid. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. The metallic clatter of dishes and the faint hum of the jukebox vanished beneath the rush of her heartbeat. She could still hear the guard's words echoing in her mind. "Once he gets in the car, it's over." That wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't idle talk. It was a threat. She glanced through the window again. The men hadn't moved from their positions, but something about their posture had changed, shoulders squared, one subtly touching the cuff of his sleeve, like checking a hidden device. Their eyes scanned the diner, but not in the way security guards usually did. These weren't protectors. They were predators. "Sir," she said again, her voice trembling, but steady enough to mask her panic. "Please, something's wrong." Alexander looked at her, confusion clouding his face. He was used to people whispering things to him, about deals, scandals, or fortunes, but never out of genuine concern. "You think they are what? Imposters?" Maya nodded quickly. "Yes. They said things that sounded like code. Military phrasing. I'm sure of it." He narrowed his eyes slightly. "You speak German. Enough to know when someone's talking about ending a man's life." The weight of her words hung in the air like fog. Alexander exhaled slowly, trying to reason through what he'd just heard. "It's impossible," he muttered. "My security detail is vetted. They have clearances, training, identification. Have you ever met those two before?" she interrupted, her tone sharper now, slicing through his doubt. He paused. That silence told her everything she needed to know. "No," he admitted quietly. "My usual men are American. Ex-military. These were sent after a last-minute change in schedule. My head of security said they were substitutes." "Substitutes." Maya repeated in disbelief. "For a billionaire under constant threat? That doesn't sound right." Alexander's throat tightened. His company, Voss Dynamics, had made enemies, dangerous ones. He'd exposed a global data laundering ring 6 months ago, and the fallout had been brutal. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, cyber attacks, even death threats. He thought the danger had passed. Clearly, he'd been wrong. The door handle jiggled again, this time harder. A sharp, impatient click. Alexander's head turned sharply. "They're coming in." Maya moved fast. She reached behind the counter, grabbed a rag, and whispered urgently, "Follow my lead." She turned her back to the window, pretending to clean a spill near the coffee machine. "Sit back down. Don't look at them. Act natural." Alexander hesitated, but something in her voice, the quiet authority of someone who'd survived worse, made him obey. He slid back into his booth, adjusting his coat to hide his watch. The bell above the door chimed. Cold air swept in as one of the men stepped inside. His suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable. The faint accent in his greeting confirmed Maya's fear. "Excuse me," he said politely, his tone too smooth, too controlled. "Our employer was here. Have you seen him?" Maya didn't turn around. "You mean the man who was drinking coffee?" she asked casually, wiping the counter. "Yes. Left a few minutes ago. Out the back door. Guess he didn't like the rain." The man frowned. "Out the back?" "Yep," she said, forcing a light laugh. "That alley connects to Main Street. He probably called another car." For a moment, silence. Then the man muttered something in German to his partner by the door. Maya caught it. Sie lügt. She's lying. Her heart skipped, but she didn't flinch. She just kept scrubbing the counter. The man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You are certain?" She turned, meeting his gaze without blinking. "Sir, I've been on my feet for 10 hours. If I say he left, he left. Now are you buying anything or just dripping rain on my floor?" The tension snapped. The man hesitated, then forced a tight smile. "No, thank you." He stepped back toward the door. "We'll wait outside." The bell jingled again. The Mercedes doors shut. Silence returned, heavy, suffocating silence. Alexander exhaled shakily. "You just lied to armed men." Maya turned to him, eyes fierce. "And you're still alive because of it." He rubbed his temples. "You don't understand who they might be. I've dealt with blackmailers, hostile takeovers, even private military contractors, but this," he trailed off, staring through the foggy glass. "If they're who I think they are, then this is bigger than money." "Then you can't go anywhere near that car," she said firmly. "You need to call someone. The police, your security chief, someone you trust." "I can't," he said bitterly. "Phones can be traced. And if these men intercepted my team, it means my network's compromised." Maya clenched her jaw. "Then what's the plan? You can't just sit here forever." Alexander met her eyes, the first flicker of trust glinting there. "Do you have a back exit?" She nodded. "Through the kitchen. Leads to an alley that runs behind the laundromat." "Good. When they realize I didn't leave, they'll come back. We have maybe 10 minutes." 10 minutes for what? He looked at her seriously. "To disappear." Maya blinked. "Disappear? I'm a waitress, not Jason Bourne." A small, ironic smile tugged at his lips. "Tonight, you might have to be both." She didn't laugh. The weight of the situation pressed harder. "You know," she whispered, "I could have just let you walk out that door. Pretended I didn't hear anything." He looked at her, really looked. "Then why didn't you?" She swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. "Because my mama didn't raise me to watch someone walk into danger when I could stop it." Alexander's voice softened. "You risked your life for a stranger." Maya forced a small smile. "Guess I've got bad business instincts." He stared at her for a long moment, admiration flickering beneath his fear. Then he stood, buttoning his coat. "Let's go." They slipped into the kitchen just as thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered, and through the window, Maya saw the two men returning, faster this time, more deliberate. The rain fell harder. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. And as the pair disappeared into the shadows of the alley, Maya whispered to herself, "God, please don't let me regret this." The alley behind Harper's Diner was soaked in darkness, the kind of darkness that made shadows move and whispers echo. Rainwater streamed down the cracked pavement, forming small rivers around their feet as Maya led Alexander through the narrow passageway. The smell of oil, damp cardboard, and rusted metal filled the air. Somewhere nearby, a stray cat darted between trash cans, startled by their hurried footsteps. "Stay close," Maya whispered, clutching the back door handle of a laundromat. She'd worked there for years to make extra cash, and she knew every back route in this neighborhood. "If those guys are still out front, they won't expect us to come through here." Alexander followed silently, his polished shoes splashing through puddles. For all his wealth and poise, he looked strangely human now, drenched, shaken, and wary. The man who once stood before cameras and shareholders now clung to the edge of anonymity. Once inside the dimly lit laundromat, Maya locked the back door and peeked through the blinds. The Mercedes was still parked outside the diner, its headlights off. The silhouettes of the two men stood near the entrance, one speaking rapidly into a phone. "They're still looking for you," she whispered. Alexander ran a hand through his wet hair. "Of course they are. They won't leave until I'm accounted for." She turned toward him. "You keep saying they. Who exactly are they?" He hesitated. His gray eyes darkened. "I'm not entirely sure which group, but I know where they come from. I've been under investigation ever since I exposed a smuggling operation through one of my own subsidiaries." Maya frowned. "Smuggling what?" "Data. Weapons. Identities." He exhaled heavily. "The deeper I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just corporate. It was international, intelligence agencies, private contractors, foreign investors. I shut it down publicly, but I think I only killed the branches, not the roots." Maya blinked. "So they want revenge." He nodded grimly. "And they've found a way to get close. My communications, my security detail, everything's been compromised. They've studied me, my patterns, my people." She crossed her arms, her voice shaking slightly. "And tonight they almost got you." Alexander met her gaze. "If you hadn't heard what they said, they would have." She turned away, her chest tightening. I can't believe this is real. This is like something out of a movie." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Unfortunately, the bullets are very real." Silence fell between them for a moment, the low hum of washing machines filling the space where fear lived. Then Maya took a deep breath. "Okay," she said, steeling herself. "So what's next? You can't just hide here forever. They'll search the block soon." Alexander's eyes flicked to a payphone near the exit. "There's one person who can help, but I have to be careful contacting him." "Who?" "My former head of security, Marcus Lane. He left the company after I exposed the corruption. He's one of the few people I still trust." "Then call him," Maya urged. He nodded, pulling a small notebook from his pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed the number into the payphone. It rang twice before someone answered. "Marcus? It's Alex." A pause. Then a low, shocked voice replied, "You're supposed to be on a plane to Geneva right now." "I know," Alexander said, his tone tense. "Something went wrong. The team that showed up, they weren't mine." Static crackled over the line. "Where are you?" "Downtown. Harper's Diner. I'm with someone. She saved my life." "Listen to me, Alex," Marcus said, his voice sharp and urgent. "If they're tracking you, they'll triangulate this call in under 5 minutes. You need to move. Head east toward the old rail yard. I'll meet you there in 20. And Alex," his voice softened, "don't trust anyone on your payroll. No one." The line went dead. Alexander turned to Maya. "We have to go." She frowned. "Rail yard. That's nearly 2 miles from here. In this weather." He looked at her seriously. "It's the only chance we have." Maya grabbed her coat from a hook and tightened the scarf around her neck. "Fine. But we're taking the back routes. I know this part of town, like the back of my hand." As they slipped into the rain again, Maya couldn't shake the chill crawling down her spine. She glanced at Alexander, the man everyone saw as untouchable, and realized how fragile he looked now. Beneath the billionaire's tailored exterior was someone fighting to stay alive, someone whose trust had been broken by the very system he built. Halfway down the block, headlights flashed. Maya pulled him into the shadows between 2 buildings. A dark SUV crept past, its tinted windows rolling down just enough for her to see a silhouette inside, one of the German men, talking into a radio. "They're widening the search," she whispered. Alexander exhaled slowly. "They know I'm still here." Her heart pounded. "Then we move now." They darted across the street, weaving through alleyways slick with rain. Maya's sneakers slapped against the wet concrete, her breath coming in quick bursts. Alexander struggled to keep pace, his polished shoes slipping. Finally, they reached the edge of the old Union rail yard, a sprawling, rusted maze of abandoned freight cars and overgrown tracks. The air smelled of metal and memory. Maya stopped, catching her breath. "Are you sure your friend's coming?" "He will," Alexander said, scanning the shadows. "Marcus doesn't abandon people." Lightning flashed, illuminating the rail cars. For an instant, Maya thought she saw movement, a dark figure at the far end of the yard. "Alex," she whispered, gripping his arm. "We're not alone." He turned, eyes narrowing. "Then stay behind me." But as the thunder rolled and the rain came down harder, another sound echoed through the night, the distant growl of an engine. And from the opposite end of the yard, the black Mercedes emerged again, its headlights slicing through the storm like knives. Maya's stomach twisted. "They found us." Alexander clenched his fists. "Then it ends tonight." The rail yard stretched out like a graveyard of steel and rust, where old trains slept under the weight of decades. The rain hammered the corrugated roofs of abandoned freight cars, echoing like 1,000 drums in the dark. Maya's breath came out in white puffs, her heart hammering so loud she feared it would give them away. She and Alexander crouched behind a row of derailed boxcars, their shadows flickering with every flash of lightning. The black Mercedes rolled to a stop at the far end of the yard. Its headlights cut through the storm, sweeping over the glistening tracks before turning off. Silence returned, except for the softness of rain and the rhythmic click of boots stepping onto wet metal. "They found us," Maya whispered, gripping the cold iron edge of the train. "How?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Marcus said not to trust anyone. That means the call was intercepted. They knew exactly where I'd go." Her eyes widened. "You mean your friend?" "No," Alexander interrupted, his voice low but sharp. "Marcus wouldn't betray me. But someone's listening. They always are." A voice rang out from the distance, deep, commanding, and unmistakably accented. "Mr. Voss," it called in English, echoing across the yard. "You've had a long night, sir. Let's end this without trouble." Maya's spine stiffened. It was one of the German men. He was holding something that glinted in the storm, a pistol with a suppressor. Alexander pressed a finger to his lips. "Don't move. They'll expect panic. We need to outthink them." Maya swallowed hard, her mind racing. The rain had turned the tracks into mirrors, reflecting every flicker of light. Then, in one bright flash of lightning, she saw something behind them, a shape moving in the shadows. She grabbed Alexander's arm. "We're not alone back here." He turned just as another figure emerged from behind a railcar, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden under a hood. The man raised his hand. "Alex, it's me." Alexander froze. "Marcus." The figure stepped closer, and lightning confirmed it. Marcus Lane, his former head of security, soaked and tense, eyes darting toward the Mercedes. "You made it," Alexander breathed, relief washing through his voice. Marcus nodded grimly. "You two picked a terrible hiding spot." Maya exhaled, tension easing for the first time. "So you're the cavalry." Marcus gave her a tight, tired smile. "Something like that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, pressing it. A soft pulse of static buzzed. "Signal jammer," he explained. "They can't call for backup now. But we don't have long. They're armed and they're trained." "How many?" Alexander asked. "2 for sure," Marcus said. "Maybe 3. But these aren't just mercenaries." There, before he could finish, a bullet ripped through the night. The shot struck the side of a freight car inches from Maya's head, spraying sparks and metal shards. She screamed, ducking low. "Move!" Marcus shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her behind another car. "They've spotted us." Gunfire erupted, muffled but deadly, ricocheting across the yard. Rain mixed with smoke as the acrid scent of gunpowder filled the air. Alexander pressed his back against the cold steel, his mind racing. He wasn't built for this kind of fight, but he had caused it. Marcus returned fire with measured precision, each shot echoing like thunder. Maya, shaking but determined, crawled beside a stack of wooden pallets. "What do we do?" she yelled over the rain. "We make them come to us," Marcus said. "They're expecting fear, not a counterattack." Another flash of lightning illuminated the 2 German operatives moving tactically between the cars, communicating through gestures. One of them lifted his wrist, revealing a tattoo, a black eagle clutching a sword. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Black Talon," he muttered. "Paramilitary contractors. They've been linked to assassinations in Europe." Alexander looked at him sharply. "Then it's them. The same group we exposed last year." Marcus nodded grimly. "And they're here to tie up loose ends." The words cut deep. Alexander realized this was personal. They didn't want his money or his company. They wanted his silence. Forever. Maya took a deep breath and looked at Alexander. "You said they were part of something big." If they kill you, whatever truth you found dies with you. He met her eyes, eyes filled with courage that didn't belong to someone who earned minimum wage. Then we can't let that happen, he said quietly. Not tonight. Marcus motioned toward an old signal tower at the edge of the yard. That's our exit. There's a service tunnel beneath it that connects to the street 2 blocks away. We move now while they're circling. They started to run, crouched low. The rain masked their footsteps, but the sound of a gun cocking stopped them cold. One of the Germans stepped out from behind a car, weapon raised. His expression was calm, efficient, like he was about to finish a job he'd done 100 times before. End of the line, Mr. Voss, he said in perfect English. You should have stayed in your tower. Maya's heart pounded. She stepped in front of Alexander without thinking. You'll have to go through me first. The man smirked. Then I will. But before he could pull the trigger, a shot rang out from behind him. He stumbled forward, dropping his weapon. Marcus stood a few yards away, gun smoking. The second operative shouted, firing wildly. Marcus dove behind cover, bullets sparking off the rails. Maya grabbed Alexander's hand, pulling him toward the tower. Go, she cried. They sprinted through the rain as Marcus returned fire. One bullet grazed his arm, but he kept shooting, buying them time. When Alexander and Maya reached the signal tower, he turned back. Marcus! Keep moving! Marcus shouted, ducking behind another train car. I'll catch up. Maya tugged at Alexander's sleeve. He'll be right behind us. Come on. They slipped into the tower's lower level, where the floor opened into an old maintenance tunnel. The air was damp and stale, but it was shelter. Above them, the gunfire faded. Then, silence. Maya turned to Alexander. You think he made it? He didn't answer. He stared up at the rain trickling through the cracks in the roof, whispering, he has to. But deep down, both of them knew the trap wasn't over. It had just changed shape. The old maintenance tunnel stretched for what felt like miles, narrow, damp, and echoing with every footstep. The air was thick with dust and oil, the kind of scent that clung to the lungs and whispered of forgotten machinery. Maya held the small flashlight from the signal tower, its trembling beam slicing through the darkness as she led Alexander deeper inside. They had been walking for nearly 10 minutes when Alexander finally broke the silence. Marcus should have been right behind us, he said quietly, voice thick with worry. He's trained for this. He wouldn't just disappear. Maya slowed her pace, looking over her shoulder. You think they got him? Alexander's jaw clenched. I think this was never about just me. They wanted all of us off the board. She frowned. What do you mean, all of us? He hesitated, eyes lost in the dim beam of the flashlight. You remember when I said we were investigating something last year? A private security firm, Black Talon. Maya nodded. Yeah, the guys with the German accents. They were contractors for a larger conglomerate called Erivos Industries, Alexander explained, his tone darkening. Officially, they supply logistics and defense solutions. Unofficially, they're arms dealers, selling weapons to banned regimes, manipulating wars to control resources. He paused. I found evidence. Contracts, ledgers, names of politicians. Billions in blood money. When I tried to expose it, they sent lawyers. Then threats. Then this. Maya stopped walking, stunned. So they tried to kill you to bury the truth. He nodded. They already buried others. Lightning flickered faintly from a grate above them, revealing his face, weary, haunted, but determined. And you kept it all? She asked softly. He reached into his soaked jacket, pulling out a small, encrypted drive sealed in a metal case. Right here, he said. Everything they've done. If this gets to the right hands, Erivos collapses, and so do half the corrupt officials funding them. Maya exhaled slowly, realization dawning. Then they're not chasing a billionaire. They're chasing the evidence. He gave her a sad smile. Exactly. I'm just collateral. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed behind them, the soft scrape of boots against metal. Maya froze, flashlight trembling. Alexander grabbed her wrist. Run. They sprinted down the tunnel, water splashing beneath their feet. The sound of pursuit grew louder, steady, confident. Then a voice echoed through the dark, calm and familiar. Alexander, it called. Stop running. It's over. Maya turned sharply, disbelief in her eyes. That voice, Alexander's heart dropped. He knew it too. No, he whispered. It can't be. Out of the shadows stepped Marcus Lane. He looked almost ghostly in the flashlight's glare, drenched, bleeding from his arm, but standing tall. His gun was pointed directly at Alexander. Maya's mouth fell open. "Marcus? What are you doing?" His expression was unreadable. "Finishing what I started." Alexander took a slow step back. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Marcus's tone was quiet, almost regretful. "You were supposed to stay quiet, Alex. They were going to let you live. But you just couldn't stop, could you? Always the crusader." "So you sold me out," Alexander said, his voice low but shaking with anger. Marcus didn't deny it. "You were going to destroy everything, not just Arivos, but the people who depend on them. You think the world's clean? You think governments don't need men like them to keep balance? Someone has to handle the dirt while you play the saint." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "He trusted you," she shouted. "You were his friend." Marcus's expression flickered with guilt. "I was, and that's why I told them to make it quick." He raised the gun higher. "But you had to run. You brought her into this." "Then shoot me," Maya said suddenly, stepping between them. Her voice cracked, but her stare was steady. "If you're that deep in their world, do it. Prove you're the monster they made you." For the first time, Marcus hesitated. Rainwater dripped through the cracks in the tunnel's roof, mixing with the silence. Alexander slowly reached into his jacket, pulling out the metal case again. "This is what they're afraid of, isn't it?" he said. "The truth. It's not just numbers, it's lives. Children dying in wars they funded, villages erased for profit. You can't tell me that's balance." Marcus's hand trembled. "You don't understand the cost." "I understand enough," Alexander said softly. "You used to believe in protecting people, Marcus. What happened to that man?" For a long moment, the tunnel was silent except for the sound of water dripping from the ceiling. Marcus's eyes flicked between Maya and Alexander, and something broke inside him. He lowered the gun. "You were always too good for this world," Marcus said quietly. "Get out of here before I change my mind." Maya grabbed Alexander's hand, urging him to move. But before they could turn, a distant rumble echoed from the far end of the tunnel, the growl of engines. Headlights flashed through the darkness. Marcus looked back toward the noise, then at Alexander. "They're coming. You've got 5 minutes before this place is crawling with them." He reached into his vest and tossed something, a small flash drive. "Backup copy of your data. If you don't make it, someone will." Alexander caught it, eyes wide. "Why are you helping us now?" Marcus gave a bitter smile. "Because even monsters have lines they won't cross." Then he turned toward the advancing lights, raising his gun once more. "Go," he barked. Maya and Alexander ran, the tunnel shaking with gunfire behind them. The last thing they heard before bursting into the cold night air was Marcus's voice, shouting in German, then silenced by a single, echoing shot. They collapsed against a wall outside, gasping for breath as the rain fell harder. Alexander stared at the drive in his palm, the truth still alive. Maya placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "He bought us time. Don't waste it." He looked up at her, eyes filled with pain and resolve. "I won't." And for the first time that night, dawn began to break, faint light piercing through the storm, as if the world itself was ready to see the truth. The morning sun finally broke through the bruised clouds, scattering light across the quiet city streets. For the first time in 24 hours, the storm was gone, but its echo lingered in the hearts of those it touched. Maya and Alexander stumbled into the small brick cafe at the corner of 8th and Brenton, soaked to the bone, their faces pale from exhaustion. The place was empty except for an elderly barista who eyed them with quiet curiosity. "Rough night?" the man asked kindly. Maya forced a weary smile. "You could say that." They sat in the corner booth, steam rising from the mugs of coffee the man brought over. Alexander's hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the small flash drive, the one Marcus had given him. He set it on the table between them like a sacred relic. "This is it," he murmured. "Everything. The evidence, the names, the transfers." Maya looked at the drive, then at him. "And what now? You take it to the press." He shook his head slowly. "Not yet. If I go public without protection, they'll come again. We need leverage, someone powerful enough to make them back off." Maya tilted her head. "Someone like the FBI." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Exactly." She took a sip of her coffee, watching the rain drip lazily down the window. "Marcus saved us," she said softly. "He could have pulled that trigger." Alexander nodded. "He paid the price for his sins the only way he knew how, by giving us a chance." His voice cracked. "He wasn't all bad. Just lost. Maya reached across the table and placed her hand over his. He believed in you at the end. Maybe that's enough. A moment of silence followed, heavy but peaceful. Outside, the street began to fill with the morning crowd, unaware of the war that had just unfolded beneath their feet. By afternoon, Alexander stood in front of a government building in downtown D.C. The marble steps gleamed under the clearing sky, and the bronze eagle above the entrance seemed to watch him with stern approval. Maya stood beside him, dressed now in a clean uniform borrowed from the cafe's owner, her hair tied back neatly. "You sure about this?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "No, but I've spent too long hiding behind money. It's time to use it for something real." They entered the building together. Hours later, inside a quiet federal conference room, Alexander handed the flash drives to two stern-faced agents. They listened as he detailed every name, every deal, every crime. Maya watched from across the table, pride swelling in her chest at the courage in his voice. When he finished, one of the agents closed his notebook. "Mr. Voss, this information is explosive. Once this goes public, you'll have enemies in every corner of the world. Are you prepared for that?" Alexander didn't hesitate. "I'm prepared for the truth." The agent nodded slowly. "Then we'll see that it finds the light." 2 weeks later, the world changed. News stations erupted with headlines. Erivo's Industries exposed. Global scandal unveiled by billionaire whistleblower. Names of politicians, generals, and corporations flashed across every screen. Arrests were made. Bank accounts frozen. Protests filled city squares demanding justice. Alexander watched it all from a quiet farmhouse miles outside the city, the one Marcus had secretly owned under an alias. He had left it to Alexander in his will, along with a handwritten note. "You were right to fight, Alex. Don't let this world make you forget who you are. M." Maya found the note first and framed it above the fireplace. "He kept a piece of his soul, even at the end," she said softly. Alexander nodded, gazing at the horizon where the sun dipped into the golden fields. Maybe that's what redemption looks like, not erasing the past, but facing it. Life settled into something new. Alexander no longer hid behind bodyguards or boardrooms. He rebuilt, not companies, but lives. He established a foundation in Marcus's name, one dedicated to helping whistleblowers, veterans, and victims of corruption. And at the heart of it all was Maya, the waitress who once worked 3 jobs just to survive, now serving as the director of the organization's humanitarian branch. One evening, as they walked through the blooming garden outside the farmhouse, Alexander stopped beside her. "You know," he said with a small smile, "the night I met you, you saved my life before you even knew who I was." She laughed softly. "I just told a rich man to stay out of a car. Didn't know I'd be signing up for a revolution." He turned toward her, eyes warm. "You did more than that. You reminded me that some things, truth, kindness, courage, are worth more than any fortune." Maya looked up at him, her voice tender. "And you reminded me that power isn't always evil, not if it's used to heal." For a moment, neither spoke. The world around them felt still, quiet, and full of promise. Fireflies flickered across the field, tiny sparks of light in the twilight, like souls finally at peace. Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pendant, a simple silver key on a chain. "This was Marcus's," he said. "It opens the Foundation's archives. I want you to have it." Maya's eyes shimmered. "Why me?" "Because," he said softly, "you've been the key all along." Her breath caught, tears glistening. "You really mean that?" He smiled gently. "With everything I am." As the sun set, the light wrapped around them, warm, forgiving, and full of hope. The world they had nearly lost now seemed brighter than ever. And somewhere in that quiet peace, it felt as though Marcus was watching, proud, redeemed, and finally free. The storm was over. The truth had prevailed. And for the first time in a long, long while, both Maya and Alexander could finally breathe again.